And I'd like to know what's going to happen tonight when there's bonfires and more parties and more honking. I'd like to know what's going to happen.
Thank you. And I share your frustration about when this is going to end. I think we'd like to know when there will be an end to COVID and what was the detailed plan to end COVID. But that was an unprecedented pandemic, and there is no detailed plan for these things. But Deputy Chief Bell, could you provide an update on the status of our criminal arrests, criminal investigations, hate crime investigations, multi-jurisdictional investigations?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chief. So as I indicated earlier, we have over 400 calls for service directly to the protest area. That's resulted in the initiation of 50 criminal investigations, 11 of which are hate crime investigations. From that, we've had so far 4 persons charged with a total of 7 offenses. There are several investigations, all of the 50 of the investigations are continuing, other ones that have been culminated by charges. Including that is the mischief around the tomb of the unknown soldier. That investigation does progress and is progressing well, and we hope to have announcements on that in the coming days, as well as some threats that we've received to various public figures that has resulted in an cooperative investigation with the Federal Bureau of Investigations in the United States, and we hope to have positive announcements around culmination of that in the near future. We have dedicated teams that, from both a hate crime perspective and a criminal investigative perspective, that are following up actively and aggressively to charge, to investigate and charge people involved in criminal activities around the protest.
Okay, thank you, Member Meehan. Member Sueda.
Thank you, Chair. And I also really want to thank the Chief and all the members of the police service for all the hard work. And I really want to urge everyone to stay patient and calm, and just everybody on every side of this issue to remain peaceful. Times are getting a little bit more tense, and we just need to everybody remain calm to ensure that there's a successful and peaceful resolution to this. Chief, I know you mentioned that you have a lot of resources from the province and from the federal government, and that's great. It's going to help alleviate the pressure on the OPS members, and also have more boots on the ground. But has there been any attempt for any political resolution to this matter? Because I understand, the policing aspect is one aspect and a very important aspect. However, I'm just wondering if there's more of a political angle to this, and is that something that you can share with us?
Thank you very much, Member Sueda. And again, I've attempted to, but maybe not effectively. From the start of the week, as I was reflecting on the first 4 or 5 days of this situation, it was clear to me that there was not going to be an alone policing solution to the circumstances that the chair has already so eloquently described in her own way, and others have echoed in their own way. And it was at that time we started to work even more closely with, through the chair and her help, and Steve Kanalakis, to get meetings with the mayor, deputy mayors and other councillors that were involved directly. Member King has mentioned earlier on, Councillor Menard, McKinney, Fleury, Leaper in the downtown areas, all were involved in those discussions. So we have elevated our operational plan to involve engagement with the municipal level. I have had, and I've reported to the board and to council several times this week, I have had direct conversations with Minister Jones, the Solicitor General, Deputy Minister of Solicitor General Mario Di Tommaso, to engage their efforts in not only providing material resources, but to raise situational awareness and to encourage them to have their own ministerial and interministerial discussions around how they can help to support our efforts here in Ottawa, and to alert them, even at that point, that this was going to be a situation that was already nationwide and was going to spread to other locations in the province, and which indeed it has, in Toronto, in Sudbury, in Windsor, in Hamilton, and other locations. I've told you, I think, 2 occasions again this evening, the efforts of Steve Kanalakis and myself on the last 3 days, 2 different meetings with the federal government, some of which has resulted in material resources like the 250 plus officers in the RCMP, all of which were accomplished on Thursday evening into Friday, and as a result of today's phone call, which Deputy Chief Bell joined me on today. We have encouraged material resources to our policing operations and received significant, particularly from the province, from all three levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, have all made significant police resource contributions to our efforts over the last 8 days. And we have had from the City of Ottawa indications from the federal government that they are understanding our context here and appreciating that there are other opportunities to support us beyond the policing public safety realm. I obviously cannot speak for any other level of government, municipal, provincial, or federal, but we've had a tremendous response locally. We are having an increasingly strong response federally, and there are lines of communication open provincially, all of which myself and my command team have been directly involved in facilitating, if not actually leading those efforts. I think more can and should be done in those areas, and I've had formal communication with Chair Deans on that matter and encouraging the chair and the board to consider all avenues around that. I think that is why this was called today. I think that's why the question was asked by the chair, and I think that's the bulk of the information we've provided here today. We need people, we need assets, we need capability, we need legal advice, we need investigators, we need intelligence. We'll need a paycheck somewhere down the road, otherwise we're going to have some strong budget issues. But most of all, we need a solution that is beyond a police solution for something that is not a policing issue. It's a societal issue. And again, the chair has eloquently described that more so than I could. So I don't know if that answers your question, sir. It has been part of our strategy, a developing part of our strategy, increasing over the last week. And I suspect will continue to increase as we go forward.
That's the main point I was trying to ask, Chief, was that we know that you're doing your best and you've gotten many resources from various levels of government. It was more, how do we address the underlying societal issue? I mean, obviously these protesters are here and came from every corner of the country to protest an underlying issue. And it's basically fallen in our laps and in your lap, Chief. And that's why I was hoping to see if there was any indication that our political leadership is going to get involved to address the societal issues that you mentioned. So thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. I don't see any other hands up, so thank you to the board members for your questions. Chief, I called this meeting today to ask a specific question, which was, do you have the resources you need to provide adequate and effective policing in the City of Ottawa? And the answer that I heard from you is no. Even though you got, in the middle of the call, 250 more RCMP officers, what has been described in all of the open fronts all over the city is that you are overwhelmed. The police service has been overwhelmed, and that this is bigger than the police service. And I needed to hear that answer today because we need to take extraordinary action. And maybe it's something that Member Sueda was getting at, but I have some questions for our legal counsel, David White, because what I'm hearing on this call is, we're taking one criminal charge at a time, but there are so many people out there engaged in a broader act of mayhem that we need to be able to bring it all under control. And I'm wondering what levers there are. I'm wondering if we could be using, and this is to you, David White, if we could be using Section 63 of the Criminal Code, unlawful assembly, and if it would be possible to get a judge to declare under that section of the Criminal Code an unlawful assembly, which I understand would allow the mayor to then declare a riot, and in turn would allow us to do some mass arrests. Now, of course, we would need people to do that, but it would at least allow us to address the situation. I know others have talked about an injunction, so I would like to hear the legal aspects of what we can do to bring this under control now.
Councillor, all of those things are things that my office and my team are looking at, all in conjunction with their colleagues with the Ottawa Police. There is no singular answer. As you've heard from a policing perspective, there's no singular legal answer as to what levers we might pull, what orders we might obtain to bring this to an end. The work that my office is doing is all with a view of assisting and supporting the operational plans that are being put in place by Ottawa Police and their law enforcement colleagues. So with respect to Section 63, we have looked at that from our perspective, Chair. That is a somewhat archaic section. We have not actually been able to find any occasion where it's been invoked. And again, taking these steps, even taking the steps of an injunction, for example, one, there are certain challenges that are associated with that. From an operational context, there are challenges that come from a legal context as well. As you saw today with the effort to obtain an injunction in the class action that's been commenced, the judge hearing that opined that he's not even sure how he would frame an order that would be effective and enforceable. So these are all things that, as I say, my office is examining, and we will provide updates, either through the police as those kind of operational imperatives develop, or through council. Certainly, if we believe that there is an effective tool that can be deployed, then that is something that we're looking at.
Mr. White, how long will it take? Because we are in such a crisis situation. I would think we would want to be in court today asking if we could use the Criminal Code Section 63 to declare an unlawful assembly. We need to get on with this now. So, I don't know what the legal roadblocks are. I understand that you have to put a case together, but this is an urgent situation. So how long will it take to get to court to get a declaration that we need to arrest this situation?
Councillor, again, or Chair, my apologies. Chair, whether the route to resolving this is one that ends with mass arrests is not a decision that my office can make, as you can appreciate. As to whether that is a viable tool is a discussion that obviously we have with our colleagues. We're in constant contact with the Chief's legal counsel in that regard. As I say, if there is a view that these are an effective tool that can serve to bring this to a peaceful conclusion, then those are certainly things that we will pursue.
Would asking the mayor to declare a state of emergency have any immediate positive impact on this situation?
Chair, from the standpoint of legal authority, the declaration of an emergency under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act does little. It may provide some relief from some of the strictures that we operate under from a procurement standpoint, but it does not imbue the mayor or the city with any additional legal authority. There are provisions, for example, if the province declares an emergency, there are specific powers that exist in the premier and in the provincial cabinet, but from the beyond the kind of symbolic value of a declaration of a state of emergency under the provincial legislation, there's no additional authority that would provide either to the city or to the police.
Mr. White, can you perhaps tell us who has the authority to declare a state of emergency that will give us the tools that we need to bring this to a halt? Is it the province of Ontario? Is it the federal government under the Emergencies Act? Who is it?
Chair, I regret, I'm not in a position to tell you as to which level of government or who might exercise the authority to bring this to an end quite frankly, without an idea as to what is necessary to bring this situation to an end. As you've heard from the chief and others, the situation that the city of Ottawa finds itself as the place that this is happening, certainly from my experience, this is unprecedented. There are authorities, as you say, with respect to declarations of emergency. The federal legislation, I think what you're referring to is the Emergencies Act, that was passed in 1988 as the successor to the War Measures Act. There are extraordinary powers that are available under that. That is, as you can expect, an extraordinary step. There are sections we don't obviously deal with it with the municipality. There are sections that provide for the declaration of a public order emergency, but I am not aware of any instance that they have been invoked, certainly in decades.
Well, this, in my mind, is an extraordinary emergency, and we need extraordinary measures. And I believe that we need to ask every level of government to use the powers and the authorities that they have to declare the emergencies that we need to bring this situation to a peaceful ending. We cannot allow this kind of terrorism in our community to continue in this way. And so I would implore our legal minds to tell us what we need to do today, who we need to ask for what authority to help us to bring this to a conclusion. Member Norman.
Thank you, Chair. You have raised the good points, and maybe David White can either endorse it or correct me. Coming back on Section 63 of the Criminal Code, I don't think there is any roadblock or we need any judicial declaration under Section 63. I think police can simply invoke that power.
Chair, with respect to, again, I would simply reiterate as to what are considered to be effective tools that will serve to resolve this without escalation, without violence. That is a discussion that we are having regularly with our colleagues at the Ottawa Police. As I say, if the operational view is that will allow this matter to be resolved in a peaceful fashion, that is something that we will certainly pursue.
Thank you, David. I think I will build on what Member Sweta and then the Chair Deans have said, that if that is the intention, and of course there may be a political will or political solution to this, and we should be looking at all the options. As Chief has been saying that all options are on the table. So possibly I would like to hear what my other relevant members have their thoughts going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Norman. Just want to, this is very, very important, and we need to get to the bottom of it. I'm also mindful that our police service, we're taking time, so we have to be cautious about that too. Member Sweta.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. White. Mr. White, just building on what Member Norman said and what the Chair was saying, we find ourselves that we have our local chief of police having to deal with not only a local issue, but a provincial, nationwide, and international issue. And I just want to, you touched on something, you mentioned that even if Section 3 is invoked, whether we can invoke it, whether the chief can invoke it, or whether a judge rules on it, what about the enforceability? So even though it's invoked, the question becomes, is it enforceable? Are we able to enforce it given the situation?
Chair, I defer to the chief and his team. That is one of the challenges that we're always faced with respect to, for example, even in the context of an injunction. And as you may have heard from the judge today, is those orders that may exist legally, but whether they are practically enforceable is an entirely different question.
So basically, the situation is the same, whether we invoke certain sections of the law or not, the situation is the same. So how can we come to a peaceful resolution regardless of whatever section is invoked? Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. White?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Swade and Member Meehan.
Thank you, Chair. I've calmed down a bit. I will ask this question. I just got some information, and it is that, could I ask David White about Part 4 of the National Defense Act, called Aid of the Civil Power, which states, if there is a riot or disturbance, the feds can send in the military. I guess it's not the same as the War Measures Act, but because this has to do with a federal issue, and the protesters are taking issue with the feds and provincial policies. Does anybody know about the National Defense Act? Can somebody look about that? Or David, Mr. White?
Chair, happy to review. Obviously, the invoking federal powers is something that is going to be exclusively within the authority of the federal government.
Okay. Okay, so there seems to be, there could possibly be a tool there. Chair, I'm wondering if we can make a direction either to you as the chair of this board to reach out to the federal government. We have several ministers who represent Ottawa ridings, Minister Fortier. We also have opposition members from this area that we can convene, ask for the Prime Minister to get involved in this, the Premier of the province, and everybody in a position of power to make this a top priority, that we come up with a solution to this. We can't allow this to continue for another week in our city. Would a direction be in order?
Probably not necessary, but certainly if you would like to direct me to do that, I think I will do it anyway. What I heard today is that we should be asking everyone who has power to act now, because we are in a crisis situation. And so there are other levels of government that have more power than we have, that could enact pieces of legislation, that could set curfews in place, and that could reduce the risk to the public. And we need to ask every single level of government to push the levers that they have that will most effectively bring about the end to this. So if you want to give me a direction, you can, but I think I understand it.
I would like to give you a direction, and I'm hoping that the other members of the board will support me in that. The Prime Minister has to make a statement on this. They're not going to go away until they hear from him. He can't ignore this anymore. This is in his front yard. This is his city, as well as our city. And the federal government have resources that they can mobilize, legal resources that we can't access ourselves right now. We have to use every tool available in a toolbox in order to bring this to a successful and a peaceful closure, and get our city back into a peaceful mode. Everybody's on the breaking point. We have COVID. We're worried that this, everybody who's unmasked and forcing others to unmask this is going to be a super spreader event, whether they're outside or not. There's children down there. There's a newborn baby down there in a truck. This is unconscionable. I respectfully ask that you do everything in your power, Chair, to pull all the powers to be together in order to come up with a concrete plan to end this.
As a police board, I think that we have heard that we need more help and more resources, and we need the assistance of the federal and provincial governments to do their part. What I'm not going to do is tell the Prime Minister how to do his job. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sure that meeting with terrorists is something that he's going to do, and I'm not going to tell him how to do his job. He can make those decisions. But I would ask both the federal and provincial governments to use the levers of power that they have to assist us to bring this under control. And Chief, just a last question to you before we do the second part of the agenda, and then if there's still a desire to go in camera, we can go in camera. But I wondered if you could provide a final list of additional asks from the police board by noon tomorrow that you need from us.
Sure, thank you. Can I just ask you potentially to give some more discretion to the timing? This is a team that's on its 13th straight day. We're still in the middle of a demonstration. What was a half-hour board meeting is now almost 2 hours, and we're going into in-camera. My operational commanders are on this call, and that's a big list. We've given you a starting point. We'll try to fine-tune it, but please, can you just give us a little more flexibility on the deadline to come back to you?
As soon as possible.
Thank you so much. Chair.
Okay. So received on this item? Received. The second item is that the Ottawa Police Services Board approve the appointment of 250 RCMP employees as the need arises through this event pursuant to Section 53 of the Police Services Act in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment letter. See item Ms. Duncan?
It's 257, Chair.
257.
Yes.
Okay, so carried on that.
Carried.
And could I ask the board to give me the delegated authority to approve approvals going forward so that we don't need to convene a board meeting to do that?
So do
agree.
Carried? Thank you.
Carried.
Okay, thank you. And then motion to move in camera.
And so move.
And Krista, do we stay on this link or is there another link? Oh, she's provided a link. Okay, so this meeting is adjourned and we'll move in camera. Thank you.